There are only 2 words we can use to describe the show you're about to listen to, and those words are great and wonderful. And awesome, too. And probably also, like, really fun. This is vaguely scientific. Oh, shoot, those are 2 words. If I were a movie, I would probably be a straight-to-video sequel of some classic. I am Derek. And joining me, as always, is the limited-run miniseries spin-off, Jim the Scientist. Hi, Jim.
I'm like Taken, not the one that has the guy from Star Wars Episode 1, but the one that's about space aliens.
Liam Neeson.
Yes, Liam Neeson. I could not remember his name.
He's my dad in Fallout.
Yeah. I couldn't remember his name, and I was relying on the 2 of you to get me through.
No problem. Well, our guest this week is a really suspenseful drama you never realized was good until you grew up and finally understood what the heck was going on. Please welcome back Allie.
Ooh, hi, everybody.
What a weird way to introduce someone.
I love it.
We are back again to do the show where listeners send us questions so they can hear our vaguely scientific answers, and who knows, we might even get some of those answers right. But first, it's time for the fun science fact of the day, Jim.
Okay. Kudzu is a tremendously invasive species in the southeastern United States. And one of the things I learned is apparently it is technically edible, but if you just sort of pick it up off the roadside, they usually spray it with pesticides to try to kill it. So you probably shouldn't try to eat it.
Yeah, it's really cool. I've seen a few times in my trips to North Carolina, like whole areas of forest that are just covered in it. And it like smothers out the trees under it too.
Yeah. I remember you and I, Allie, went to Kentucky a couple years ago, and there was a fairly large hill that was just wallpapered in it. It was something.
I like these pictures of places infested with it. It's just like a sea of green.
It's very magical.
It's very magical. It's a heavily
if it wasn't
invasive
super
species.
invasive. Yeah.
Well, it's magical in its appearance. Like it looks like it's like a fey realm or something where it's just there's so much vegetation.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if it wasn't, it was brought over because it was an attractive plant that you could put in your garden or what have you. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. If it wasn't something that looked cool, then I don't think we would have brought it over in the first place. But yeah, it does look really neat.
I want this part of the planet to look pleasing to me. Quote, humanity.
Yeah. This little square of my world.
This little square of my world, yeah. So that was interesting. And I suppose without further ado, we should tackle at least one of the questions we have prepared for the episode this week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Question 1 this week comes to us from Jonathan. Where do you draw the line with cannibalism? He goes on to explain the definition of cannibalism explicitly states the same species, but certain humanoid species like Saiyans or Kryptonians, if they existed, would their killing and eating of humans be considered cannibalism? It's not technically the same species, Jonathan says.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you draw the line with cannibalism? I am mostly against it.
Yeah.
Like just in its entirety. For humanity.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I mean, if you want to go and eat a Saiyan, I suppose that's fine, right?
Well,
They would eat you, and you know it.
I don't think so.
I have some interesting places to go with this, but the very first place I wanted to start is the idea that cannibalism being mostly considered bad, ethically, isn't because they're the same species. It's because they are a sentient, intelligent creature capable of communicating.
Yeah.
That's Well, okay, go ahead.
Are they intelligent?
Well, yes, that's not the well. So, I mean, we can continue on that thought train, but the origin of cannibalism is bad is because it makes you sick, which we can talk about later if you'd like, and you can continue your thought process. But it is bad because it's immoral and you're eating like a sentient species that is, thinking and processing and all that jazz. But the origin of that thought is because it does make you sick.
Well, I kind of wanted to tackle both, like, I guess kind of at the same time, because humans eating other humans, historically, we look down on that, I think. We shy away from that. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of species of animals that in times of overpopulation or scarcity of food will eat the weaker members of their community, such as rabbits and mice and gerbils. And I was looking into that specifically to see if there were medical ramifications for that in like rodents, and there are. So I thought that was really interesting and didn't really know that before.
Huh. What are the medical ramifications of that in stuff like rodents?
So increased signs of hepatitis and bacterial infections.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know how to pronounce this word, but pasteurilosis. Pasteurilosis.
Not familiar with that.
I'm going to look that up, actually.
Yeah.
And that's just specifically in mice.
Yeah, okay.
Pasteurilosis is a bacterial infection caused by, wouldn't you know, Pasteurella bacteria.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's as far as I'm getting on a cursory Google search.
Mm-hmm. You connected a thought in my brain that I hadn't really connected before, which is that, transmission of disease between animals of different species is not common, right? Usually a virus or a bacteria is designed to attack a certain, is it a protein technically or a cell?
It could be a number of different things, but you're right. Yeah, I mean, it's designed to attack certain things in the target creature, and there is not as much crossover as one might think.
Yeah, it's not common in general, but if you are ingesting the same species, your rate of infection must go up exponentially because that transfer is easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's where humans get like kuru, I believe, is, because it's an infection of the brain that the only way to really get it is to eat the brain.
Yeah.
Is that a prion disease?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I read that somewhere.
Those are tremendously scary.
Tell me about that.
Oh.
They are basically misfolded proteins. So one of the things that I think is really cool about proteins is that they only really have two different kinds of folds that they do. They have a helix shape and they have like a zigzag pleated sheet shape. And they combine in different ways that they can use those shapes to make any protein. Like you can spiral and pleated sheet your way to any shape, basically. But a prion, it might be pronounced prion. I've heard it both ways, but the prion diseases, they are misfolded proteins that do, they are the same chain, but they do a different thing, generally a very bad thing. And the scary thing to me is that they will like match up with the correctly folded proteins and then misshape those. And so it spreads through your body. Yeah. It will denature your normal proteins and turn them bad. And it's very hard to get rid of these. Like there are some prion diseases that resist being cooked in like food. Yeah. So it is not my favorite of the disease transmission vectors because it's a spicy one.
That's scary.
Yeah, that's where you get like mad cow disease is probably the most famous.
That's what
one.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. Oh.
Cattle would end up getting those diseases, and then the meat would. So does that mean that it was passing and infecting humans when cows had? Okay.
Mm-hmm. But sort of to Ali's point earlier, a lot of our proteins are not that, like, there are similar proteins, but a lot of our proteins are not one-to-one exactly the same with like certain animals. So, I mean, mammals, you're going to have predominantly similar ones, but like if you go to like a jellyfish, I don't think you can get a jellyfish prion disease.
I don't know if jellyfish have prion diseases.
Do jellyfish have proteins? They're mostly water.
No.
I'm just gonna take Jim's word for it, because if he doesn't know, I'm not gonna know.
Yeah. I surely don't.
I don't think jellyfish have prion diseases. I Googled this and I'm not seeing any results, but don't necessarily take my word for it. Call your local microbiologist and find out for sure.
Do your own research.
Yeah. But only use reputable sources, for God's sake.
I love the idea of our listeners picking up a phone and calling like a college microbiologist and being like, what's going on with jellyfish?
Well, what is the deal? We need to know.
From what I understand of like many college microbiologists, they may welcome that, actually.
I'm going to make some phone calls when we're done here.
Yeah. So, I mean, on this basis, where it's like the origin of the I hate to use the word distaste for cannibalism.
It's too on the nose.
But it was perfect.
Yeah. Is that it can make you very sick, and that it's easy to get sick from it. So, like, if there was a Saiyan, right, and they came here to Earth, they would not have the same diseases and immune system that we have. We would probably make each other, would we make each other very sick? I don't know.
That's one of the points I wanted to make, and I didn't know how valid of a point it was really going to be, because this is all going to be lore specific to whatever we're exploring. Because here's the disappointing: Saiyans and Kryptonians aren't real.
What?
You don't know that for sure.
But that's the thing, is like I wanted to try and look at rodents that are more closely related but aren't the same species, to see how far you can get without it being a problem. But the reason that I was thinking like that is there are a lot of science fiction stories where humanoid species all have some kind of distant seeded ancestor. So like, and I don't remember if that's the case with Saiyans. I know there have been Superman stories where that is the case with Kryptonians.
I don't know.
So that kind of gets to the other facet of exploring the question. When the question is, where do you draw the line? What line? Are we drawing an ethical line? Are we drawing a medical line? Because if we're just talking about the fact that it can give you a disease, then two intelligent conversational species could absolutely eat each other. And then it would only be an ethical debate. But I don't know. So that's another way to look at it.
But to your point, like the initial point, which was societies throughout time, for the most part, have made this a like, hey, don't eat each other. Like, we don't do that. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, and sometimes very specific exceptions to that rule. But I think that painting in broad strokes, for the most part, our society has said, no, we don't do that. R is a big O on that one. So.
Right. I want to bring up, I guess, the specific point that when we say cannibalism is bad, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times we're talking about certain cases in more recent history of murder and cannibalism.
Yeah.
In which case it is really the murder that is the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we probably were all thinking about like the Donner Party, for instance.
Sure.
That, and then there was also the case of the airplane crash, I believe in the Andes Mountains, which the survivors ended up participating in cannibalism. And a lot of those types of cases are interesting because they are people who are desperate to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
in a lot of, I mean, in at least the case of the folks from the airplane crash, it like is a big thing to them. Like the fact that they had to do it, they're like ashamed of that. And I think that's very interesting because they didn't murder a person and then eat them. They were folks that had already been killed in the plane crash that they then cooked and ate. So it was even like not quite the same as like a situation where someone was going around and trying to just eat people after murdering them or anything. It was like a desperate survival thing, and they still felt guilty about it.
Yeah. I kind of want to take this on like a secondary level because and part of the reason why I asked for this question in particular is have been engaged in the anime Delicious in Dungeon. And they, at one point, raise a question. So, the whole point of the thing is that they are exploring this almost roguelike dungeon, and they're eating the creatures that are inside of it. And so they start to develop these rules about what they are comfortable eating. And they're like, no merfolk, no harpies, that's too human-like. And then it's like, but there are more fish-like merpeople, and there are more human-like merpeople. So are the fish-like merpeople okay to eat? And are the more classic human torso merpeople not okay to eat? And it's like, but if one answer is yes, then why?
Yeah, yeah. Now, are those sentient creatures?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's an important distinction as well. And like if even if like a non-human or like a non-human shaped alien came down, and I feel like that would be not a good thing to do. Like if they were a sentient alien race that came down, and I don't think I would snack on them.
I think of the big squids from Arrival. Did you see that movie?
No, but you told us about it, yeah.
Time is a flat circle. So they're big and squid-like, but they are sentient and they can communicate. So would they make a mean calamari? I don't know, maybe, but where's that line?
Well, there are people now that are advocating that we don't eat octopus.
I'm one of them.
Because okay. Well, so there's no medical harm in a person eating octopus because they've been doing it for years, but now we think they might be very intelligent. So that gets into that. We just have an ethical problem with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to factor in if we were to meet even if it was like if you met a talking dog, you wouldn't necessarily treat it like a pet, I think.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So that kind of factors in just, can we communicate with it? Maybe let's not eat it.
So, communication as a barrier is a very weird line to draw because there's lots of languages I don't speak, but I also don't go around eating people that don't speak English. Also, wasn't there a whole situation where white people were eating mummies, and is that cannibalism?
Wait,
discussed?
That's absolutely cannibalism. Yes.
Okay,
I
great.
don't know anything about this, but it would be cannibalism for sure.
Yeah, they were taking old dried up mummies and then powdering them and then ingesting them.
Right. Okay. Yes. I do know that. That was a medicinal thing.
Well, they thought it would make them more beautiful.
I mean, I count that as medicinal.
And heal certain properties. So they would take the organ of a certain mummy that they thought I have this ailment of the humor or whatever they were talking about back then, and then they would try to ingest the organ or area where they thought that would be helpful from.
That does sound like something people would do.
Yeah.
So I couldn't find the information that I was trying to find, but I remember without watching a Vsauce video that I don't have time to do right now. But I remember there were cases talking about someone like having a limb amputated, and would it be okay for them to eat the meat from that? And that doesn't come up a lot. But the thing that I immediately think is you already have whatever diseases are in that piece of meat. But at the same time, in a Donner Party scenario where it's to survive, you're not going to be gaining any energy, I don't think, because you're losing a limb and then just consuming. It's a net loss.
Well, it is a net. Is it a net loss? Because the thing is that, like, you spend a lot of energy growing that limb over the course of a long time, but then, like, you lop it off, and now you can, like, recycle that energy. You're going to lose a lot in the process. So it will be like a net loss in that sense. But, like, if you need to keep going and you don't need that arm anymore, or like for instance, it is frostbitten beyond the point of repair, it's not a great idea. I don't think it would be worth doing necessarily, but it's also, it is a theoretically possible thing to do.
Ugh.
Huh.
It would be the worst.
We're not advocating it, but
I have a secondary, like, thought about this too.
Okay.
It's also, I'm so sorry, it's also delicious and dungeon related, but I won't go into it because it's kind of a spoiler, and, like, even though it happens in, like, the first literal 5 minutes of the show / manga, I don't want to spoil it. But if let's say, I'm going to use a deer because they're my scapegoat most of the time. If a deer,
why not a goat?
What?
Why not a goat? It's scapegoat. That was bad joke.
Because goats are fine to me, and deer are not.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If a deer, like, found a body in the woods, right? And the deer ate that body because they're monsters. And then a hunter shot that deer and ate the deer. That deer ingested and consumed a person. It used that person to fuel itself.
To do deer stuff.
When we die, our bodies become the grass, and the antelope eat the grass. That's just the circle of life.
That's brilliant, Derek. Have you thought about, like, putting that out there in the world as, like,
inspirational
quotes?
I thought about it while we were working on Hamlet, and I was like, we could probably turn this into something.
Wow. That's great. But yeah, so, like, is that anything? Is that anything? Is that thought anything at all?
I think that the thought is, I don't think it's cannibalism. I think it's a very nice thought. Like,
thank you.
Like the fact that, after we get eaten by the woods deer, that live out there that eat all the birds and the other things, we still go on as, like, fuel and nutrients, and I think that's a nice thought.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that deer just will eat, like, an actual corpse, but that is a fact that is a thing that happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's different if the deer has recently eaten it, because then it's, like, still in the deer's stomach, but you don't typically eat the contents of an animal's stomach.
No.
If you're going around and doing that, you should stop.
Yeah, don't do that.
Knock it off.
And I guess technically haggis is, but that's put in there after.
I was gonna say
it's
that's
not the
like,
contents.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's the stomach, but it's not like you're eating what's in the stomach. You're filling the stomach with other things that are.
Yeah.
I feel like I've said this before on the show, and I feel like I've also said it to at least one of you individually. But when I was in college, I did a real dumb thing, and I gave myself a very minor electrical burn.
Oh.
Yeah.
And my burning flesh smelled quite bad, and I don't think I would want to eat a person based on the smell of their flesh burning.
I do find it, like, kind of fascinating, the myths that come along with cannibalism, and, like,
okay.
There is a creature that you're not supposed to say the name of, which I won't, which is in Native American mythology that, if you ingest the flesh of a human, you would become this beast.
I thought about that.
It does have a deer head, so like I'm not too off base about my deer joke.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Oh dear. But I think that's like a whole nother can of worms that we could get into with
a whole nother cannibalism.
A whole nother cannibalism, Jim. That was great.
There's your title for the episode.
The one other thing I did want to mention that I thought was kind of interesting is that a lot of these fantasy creatures, not even fantasy creatures, like Saiyans fall into this category too, is they can breed with humans. So they are not like tremendously far removed from humans. Like, in fantasy settings, you can see like half elves and like basically any of the half species. You see that all the time. Dragon Ball Z, obviously, Goku and Chi-Chi have 2 sons. So
so they're genetically compatible at least.
And that's not like a blanket statement. Like there are a lot of animals that are genetically compatible that can't make like valid offspring. Like tigers and lions are not the same species, but they can make ligers, which are not in the best health, but so they're genetically close enough that I think that you start to run into like, oh yeah, this is at best it's morally gray, and at worst it is actually cannibalism.
Yeah.
But you don't see lions eating a lot of tigers, but you do see mice eating mice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And rabbits eating rabbits. I don't know, you don't see, I guess rats will eat mice, but like you don't see a lot of rodents eating other kinds of rodents.
Well, it depends. Like, I mean, there were a lot of situations where like mice traps where it was just like a big hole or like basically like an inescapable bucket or something like that, where they do start to eat each other because they're starving, so they will. So
is that so removed from like the earlier scenario with humans?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It seems like animals generally don't prey on their own species unless there are extremely extenuating circumstances.
I also like I wonder, because I know that rodents will oftentimes eat their young if they like are, I know rabbits will do this if they're like even freaked out a little bit, or if like they sense danger, they'll just eat their young because it's easier just to have new young than it is to try to like readapt the situation. But
that is true there.
Yeah, but it's also like they're so new that I wonder if like the disease count is lower, and so there's less risk because they're just like fresh.
Oh, yeah. You probably.
I don't know that for sure.
Well, the studies I was looking at, it did specifically say they noticed things like hepatitis, and that one I couldn't pronounce, were in like lab scenarios where it wasn't the offspring, it was just they had a lot of mice in a small container.
Yeah.
So maybe diseases haven't developed yet in their young.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they're not exposed to it, then there wouldn't be any way for them to get it, really. So
interesting.
I do think it's interesting, though, that a lot of these in a lot of these settings and like these worlds, that you do see a lot of basically humans can crossbreed with these various other creatures, which makes the question harder.
It does. It does.
But it's also that we talked about it a little bit when we talked about the Asari from Mass Effect.
Yeah.
And Joe, I think I might have made the comment, but Joe and I were in agreement that like some of those were designed specifically because people wanted them to look like people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, if you met an actual alien creature, the chances that it was designed specifically to look human are slimmer.
Yeah.
Right.
I think this harkens back to like where we talked about the fact that like and real aliens biology is like probably so much weirder than we can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always liked, I don't know if I could ever find it again, but it was a documentary that Discovery Channel, I think, put out back in probably around the turn of the century, honestly, where they were talking about what it might be like to see an alien signal come through that we could then interpret as like definitively being from an alien. But the aliens that they like developed for this documentary looked really cool. They were basically like big squid guys, and I liked it a lot.
I love big
Everybody
squid
likes
guys.
big squid guys.
Yeah.
That brings me to the question to end this. My thoughts on this question.
Question to end all questions.
The question to end all questions.
Jinx, Jim owes me a Coke.
I did not say that at the same time.
Someone, Jim, in the post edit, you should edit those to overlap so that it is at the same time.
Okay.
So if you are an adventurer in D&D and you kill a centaur
Mm-hmm.
and you eat the horse half,
Okay.
Then you're a hero.
is it cannibalism?
And you eat the horse.
Oh my.
Okay, all right. This is going to take...
This is
We're
question 2 this
53
week.
minutes into the recording.
I
We've
should
reached
not-
this.
I should not be allowed to go on. So I think centaurs need to be redesigned aesthetically, even if we ignore their biology, so that the human half of a centaur does not look literally like a human torso stuck on. I think it should be just a vaguely humanoid, but different creature.
But
Like, that's
it's
what
not,
I think.
though. So we have to answer the question as it is.
I refuse. I refuse to accept.
I mean, I feel like
Considering-
it's not cannibalism, but it still falls under the like, please don't eat sentient creatures that can converse with you in your language clause.
The please
But
in there is
can they?
really touching.
Like it, but like which canon of centaurs are you going with? Because they're like savage beasts in the myths.
I said
Like,
D&D,
You
and
did.
they're
Okay,
nice in
that's-
D&D. Well, some of them are nice. I'm sure there's some nasty ones. Some real freaks out
They
there.
might not even taste good, though.
I've had horse. It's pretty good.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't dog food made out of horse meat?
It's made out of
I don't
dogs,
know.
man. That's why it's called dog food.
I feel like last time I was doing a tour around the zoo, they mentioned that they feed the lions and tigers horse because it's a higher like value protein.
Huh.
Oh,
Yeah, not centaurs though,
no,
They draw the line somewhere.
because
They don't have a
apparently
lot
that's
of those.
unethical.
Mm.
centaurs are unethical.
You're unethical.
There's that.
Yeah, but we're not talking about that right now. All right, I'm gonna move on.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
time.
It's well past time.
I'm excited how much we mined out of that well.
That was great. Good job, everybody. We did it.
Mhm.
I'm glad I picked that question.
Yeah.
Full of good facts, interesting takes, and just nonsense.
Yeah.
That's vaguely
yeah.
scientific, baby.
Yeah.
It's vaguely there's your ad. Clip that and put it in the next promo.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, we do have a second question that Allie also wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Question 2 this week comes to us from Anne. If we used genre classification, such as romance, Western, science fiction, etc., instead of biological taxonomy, where would your favorite plants and animals fall?
I'm realizing right now in this moment that I misinterpreted that question.
Oh no.
Into music genres and not like
Oh.
You can.
Book
We can talk
genres?
about that.
so
It just says genre classification. It doesn't say literary genre.
That's
but
true.
it lists literary genres.
Well, hold on. Let me just go add. I'm just going to add reggae. There we go. I spelled that wrong, but it's okay.
Anyway, there's science fiction music for sure.
Sure.
Oh yeah, and Western music.
Oh,
I guess.
yeah.
It's called
country music.
country though.
Yeah.
And I guess like because from my perspective, I then wanted to ask you guys, like, what is your music genre list? Because like
Mhm.
there are hundreds and upon hundreds of actual music genres. So
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here,
Right.
but I don't know. I just wanted to also know what you guys think of for music genres. Which is not the
I-
question, but here we go.
No, it's fine. Because I none of this negates what I had to say about it, because the thing I think is interesting about genre theory in general is that the word genre literally just means category. So technically, biological taxonomy is genre.
Yeah.
Oh, so we did it already.
Like,
so we did it already.
Genus is probably has the same root, I would imagine.
I mean, I did stick in preparing things to talk about, but I'm happy to riff.
Oh yeah, I think that one of the things that's kind of fun about this sudden change is that like there are so many weird genres of music that you can get real into the weeds about it. So
that fits with literary genre as well, because a lot of times, like if you look at just rock or we'll even say, we'll make it a little bit more specific. If you look at metal music, there are so many subcategories of that. To someone who isn't a huge metalhead like me, a lot of times if somebody says, well, that's thrash metal and that's black metal and that's death metal, I'll be like, yeah, it's all just the songs. It's all different songs.
Yeah.
You know, like, but that fits with literature too, because Western in particular, technically for anything to be a Western, it just has to take place in the Wild West of the United States. But we associate things with the Western genre, such as like revenge stories and colonization of the taming of the wilds, all these tropes you can think of that definitely existed before Wild West movies were ever made. So I think the nebulous nature of that is interesting.
It's like the Lone Ronin, like Japanese stories are like very close to what Westerns typically are.
Well, yeah, and a lot of really famous Westerns were based on Kurosawa films.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Derek, I picked this question also because you do a very interesting thing on your social media page, which is you select a new favorite animal frequently.
I do. I do that.
And so I was very curious, like, what genre your favorite animal of this month, or like even just of 2024, like the top 4.
As we're recording this, I haven't picked one for April yet. So
I think it's time to do it right now, bud.
I'm gonna have to. See. Okay, so you posted something in our Discord.
I surely did.
Which is, I'm pulling it up now, the spotted Phanoloca. I don't know how to pronounce that. And I was very tempted to pick that because I had not seen that animal before.
I've never heard of that. That's interesting.
I don't know. I pick a wide range of things that I try to just pick very obscure, or not obscure that like most people hadn't heard of them, but I try not to be predictable about it, I guess. So like a lot of people have like wolves or lions are their favorite animal. And I like to pick a lot of just, I've never heard of this animal before, but I just learned a big bunch of stuff from its Wikipedia page, and that's what I'm interested in today. And I have a lot of friends who are very off-put by spiders, and I have a little bit of difficulty talking to them because I just genuinely like spiders and find them fascinating. And so in that regard, I would have to put spiders in a horror genre.
Oh yeah.
I think that's correct.
But
no, well, you but first.
But that leads me to a point I was at some point destined to bring up here, that you can make any genre of any animal. So like I have looked at a lot of pictures of spiders that are just, in my opinion, very cute.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking these are more, I don't know, child comedy, cartoon, lighthearted genres, and not horror. But so the other example I could think of was like hippopotamus. Most people would, if you're not super well versed with hippopotamus, you might think comedy, because you'd think of like Fantasia, the Disney cartoon.
Yeah, or Hungry Hungry Hippo.
Right, Hungry Hippos. And for me, a hippopotamus is either an adventure story or it is just straight up a monster movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, because, like, I always think of, not specifically Jungle Cruise, because I've never seen that movie, but it's like, hippos are like the classic safari, like, you go through the wilds of Africa, the rainforests, and you run into hippos and rhinos and all the classics. And also, they murder people.
With more frequency than any other animal.
Yep. Yeah, so that's really kind of, I don't know. I like to break expectations and get things to play against type a lot in my brain, and so I'm very drawn to when I hear somebody say, "Oh, I hate this kind of animal, they're the worst." I'm very much like, I want to learn more about them so that they can be my favorite animal.
I wish more people had that mindset, because I hear so often, like, the bug thing, I kind of understand. I love bugs and spiders and stuff like that. But the, like, downright, like, draw the line, I hate and will kill this creature on sight, I am like, that sucks, don't do that. But
Yeah.
I also, like, love to advocate for the weird critters, and, like, all of my favorite animals are just absolute, like, freaks, and I love them. But it's like, when you see something that's different, like, ask questions about it. Like, why does it look like that? Why does it do that behavior? And there's such a, like, resistance to that. So I appreciate that, Derek.
I am sad to say that I will kill house centipedes on sight.
I will too, but I have a grudge with them. It's long-standing. Have war crimes been committed? I won't admit that legally.
I am off put by centipedes more than I wish I was. But in my adulthood, the fact that I've learned what they eat, like, I will no longer kill them if they're in my basement.
Yeah.
See, I like a lot of the things they eat, though.
Well, they'll eat pests, though. Like, they'll eat like, I don't want ants to be eating my food and infesting my food. So I like spiders because they'll catch the ants and the flies and the mosquitoes. And centipedes will do that too, like house centipedes.
But they also get the spiders, and I like the spiders.
Yeah. So you're right. I want to bring up, before I forget, to kind of retaliate with Ali bringing up my Facebook habits. A while back, I randomly said I have a lot of artist friends who I wish did, played along with these challenges with me sometimes. But I will sometimes put on Facebook, "Hey, all of my artist friends, here's a random prompt. Go ahead and draw it." And I've done in the past, like, do an animal imagined as a human being, or
I missed that one.
Combine two animals together. And one that I said maybe a couple months ago, I think, was, please draw a cute version of a commonly accepted ugly animal. And Ali sent me this picture of this vulture that you've drawn.
Yeah.
And I immediately realized this is a really difficult challenge for me in particular, because when people will send me, "Here's a cute picture of this ugly animal," I'll be like, that animal's not ugly.
Well, it's commonly perceived as ugly.
Right.
Right. I don't think vultures are ugly. I think they're beautiful and majestic. And they're like tenders of the dead, and they're very, very cool and metal. But a lot of people see them and are like, "Ew, it's wrinkly and gross." And I'm like, no, the wrinkles have a purpose.
The wrinkles have a purpose, yeah.
The only thing I don't like about vultures, because I also think they're pretty cool. I don't think they're, like, beautiful, but I like the way they look. They're well designed for what they are. And that's the important thing about evolution, is you just need to be designed to do what you need to do. But the only thing I don't like about them is they throw up on their own legs.
They don't throw up on their own legs, Jim. They pee on their own legs.
Oh, that's
Get it right.
better.
Well, who hasn't done that?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I mean, I've got a 2-year-old, so.
That fool's peeing on his legs all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they do throw up bones, I think. but
Who
like
doesn't?
they pee on their legs, and that's to keep them clean because they're stepping in all that, blood and guts.
Yeah. I mean, I like
Yeah.
it. I like a good vulture. The Wright brothers liked a good vulture.
But Derek, to your point, like with these creatures that are like perceived as ugly or whatever, like I feel like there is a very natural human response to a lot of this, which is that like we perceive things as texturally very gross sometimes. And like a lot of animals have some pretty wild textures because of that evolution. So like, a lot of people love things like wolves and dolphins and horses because they're like, one, very common and palatable to our minds, but like they also don't have a bad texture to them. Like things like spiders and vultures have a bad texture look, and like I would still pet one, but a lot of people would be like, ooh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Their shape is also like weird.
That's my turn off to reptiles is I'm afraid of the texture. And then like once I do it, I'm like fine. But like I look at it and it's like that's gonna hurt. It's spiky and hard. They have I think it's the zoo that brings around the little skink, right?
Yeah, the blue-tongued skink.
Yeah, and every time they're like, "Oh, you can pet the skink," and I'm like, "I don't know if I want to," and I've done it before, so like I should not have that reaction to it. But it's
they're cool.
Yeah, they are cool, but they look so sandpapery, and it's like that's not gonna feel good.
That's interesting. Like I've handled a lot of snakes, and a thing that I still commonly hear from people who don't like snakes are like, "Oh, because it's all slimy." I'm like, but they're not.
They're not.
Yeah.
But, and this also harkens back to another episode. Sorry, everyone. But they are colder than us. So it's that trick of like, our body doesn't have a wet receptor. So it's like things that are cold feel wet.
Yeah.
And so like snakes and other reptiles are colder than our body heat. So it's like, it might like trigger that response somewhat.
Yeah. Listen, don't apologize for forcing the listener to go into our back catalog.
You're right.
They should do
You're
it.
welcome for the promotion.
Yeah.
I also want to state that in my categories, because the turkey vulture is one of my favorite animals.
Oh, okay.
It's country music for sure. Like that fool is like for sure country music.
Well, so I was gonna say turkey vulture definitely would fit Western for me. So yeah, we're kind of on the same page there.
They have that vibe.
So I put on my list what is probably my favorite animal. It's quite dead, and it is the trilobite.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I think that musically, that would be sort of like a classic like 40s swing, like jazz pop kind of thing. Like where they would go out and they'd dance, and it was like World War II era. I don't know why. That's just how I feel.
Interesting.
It's all feels up in here.
Yeah, it's like the radio staticky pop that comes with it too.
I just thought of this now, but I really want to say bumblebees. And I feel like this is just because of that one specific song, but like it fits so perfectly. The flight of the bumblebee. I can picture exactly what is being described.
Yeah.
No, that's a good one.
I love when musically, like music can paint a visual without it like having lyrics, like just the sound of something can harken to bird or bee.
Yeah.
I have a favorite animal, which you both know.
Yeah.
But I also like have a category in my brain that is favorite animal. So it's like the okapi is king of the castle. That is my number one favorite animal. But there is also a folder that exists that is just full of my favorite animal. Okay. And there's a ton of them. And I don't want to do all of them, but I do want to shout out a few because I...
Go for it.
So the okapi, I feel, is very indie pop. Where it's like, you get like a little bit of the like folky vibe to it, but it also has this like kind of upbeat little like poppiness to it, because they have such a stark appearance where they're so weird and different, but they're also very like creatures of myth and lore and stuff like that. And then the one that I really, really felt passionate about was the giant anteater.
Oh,
And
okay.
Ooh,
it speaks to me in jazz.
I can see that.
I like
Just
that a
how
lot.
it moves and how it kind of like bebops around a little bit just feels so jazz to me.
Hmm.
I want to say the first thing that comes to my mind, because I'm translating to literary or film genre.
Yeah.
So the first thing that came to mind as soon as we started, because I started thinking about it before you said the word, the okapi.
Yeah.
Is, and this is a super specific
Mhm.
genre, but early 80s live action Japanese sci-fi.
Oh, okay.
Like Zerum? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So like the old timey Ultraman and like Giant
Yeah.
Robo. Okay.
Yeah. And that's okapi for me.
Actually, I think Giant
I
Robo
love
was like
that.
mid 70s, but
Well, okay, that's fine.
is that what
Yeah.
you mean? Like a tokusatsu kind of?
Not exactly tokusatsu, but like they would fit. Like sci-fi that is campy, but not as campy as like the 66 Batman show because they're
Yeah.
trying to make it anime.
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah.
I don't know, this is very nebulous. I'm sorry.
No, so it's like a little bit silly, right?
Yeah.
Oh, like Kamen
It's
Rider.
campy.
Kamen Rider is a good one. Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
as a jumping off point, this is not quite as related as I was hoping it was going to be. But when I looked at giraffes, which I love giraffes, I
Mhm.
put like contemporary fantasy. So
Okay.
like the
Yeah.
idea of like a Dresden Files or like I guess Harry Potter falls under this as well, where it's like modern world fantasy, because giraffes to me are like horses that are magical and strange and slightly different in a way.
Yeah.
And so it's like it exists in this world and it makes sense in this modern world, but it's also magical. And that's what I think of with contemporary fantasy too.
I want to reinforce that with just another specific example. That also that this has less to do with the thing that your thing had little to do with, but in the video game Last of Us,
Mm-hmm.
which is that zombie game that they've remade a million times and I played once. There's a scene they're going through. I don't remember what city it's in because they go all over the United States in that game. But there is one city where that they get through a big pile of post-apocalyptic rubble, and they open this door and they see out onto this green field,
Mm-hmm.
and it must be near a zoo or something. And the characters come across this herd of giraffes
Yeah.
that are just walking, and it is exactly as Jim is describing. This scene in this game was presented as this magical moment, and it really had that effect on me, at least.
Yeah.
So like I could see that.
Yeah. And that was portrayed in the show as well, like really,
Oh,
really
cool.
well.
I never watched
and
the
just
show.
that
Okay.
like it's a healing moment. It's a magical moment. It's this like reflection of the good, like in the bad, right? There's this like
Mhm.
totally destroyed cityscape, but here's this like strange magical creature that is like, I will eat leaves out of your hand, young one. Hello. And it very much fits that vibe.
It's like they stumbled on a unicorn.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Is the way it's done, which unicorns are one of my favorite fictional animals. So
Mhm.
And what genre would you put that in?
the best genre. They epitomize timeless fantasy for me, primarily
Yeah.
because of The Last Unicorn. The book
Mhm.
is just what I think of as just kind of magical realism, but
Mhm.
not the literal definition of magical realism.
Right, yeah.
Mm.
I don't think this necessarily fits as well as I sort of think it does, but it's all subjective, so here we all go. I
Yeah.
put jellyfish because I love jellyfish. I put that
Mhm.
into horror because
I can
Correct.
see that.
what did you say correct?
I did say correct.
Okay, good. Because to me, it sort of represents a creature that its main function is to eat and to cause pain, and you can't reason with a jellyfish. Like, they are the most mindless you can have. Like, they don't have a mind. They have a neural net, and that's about it. So there's no reasoning with the jellyfish. They will sting you whether you pose a threat to them or not, because they don't really have movement either. And
Yeah.
I just think it's like, they're not like scary to me, at least. I'm not like worried about jellyfish, but they would be genre wise. I think they'd fall under horror.
No, I agree. But here's the thing. I also feel like they're like so magical and whimsical looking that like when I see them in an aquarium, I'm like, beautiful.
Yeah.
Love these guys. They're great to look at. But if I'm in the ocean and one gets stuck in the arm of my swimsuit, they're the worst beings that have ever existed, and I hate them and they're horrific. But like, I think it's just like, from a distance, it's almost like, Jim, you probably have not, because you don't watch a lot of horror, do you?
No, I'm afraid of horror.
That's fair. Annihilation, Derek, have you watched Annihilation?
I don't know that one.
It is this like almost Fey realm looking thing where it's like it encompasses an area and everything in it has this like very magical appearance to it, but everything is very dangerous. And that to me is what jellyfish are, where it's like this beautiful magical Fey thing, but like deadly. Not deadly. Well, some of them are deadly.
So I think it's interesting that you picked horror, because I do agree with you. And something that's like often an offshoot of horror is like creature science fiction,
Okay.
which is what I was thinking. But I think that's interesting, because when I think of that view of jellyfish in a tank or an aquarium or just like film footage, it's not in my brain. It is not accompanied by anything terrifying music wise. It's accompanied by like a floaty kind of slow, pretty sound.
It is in my head. It is accompanied with the song from Super Mario 64 that plays on Dire Dire Docks.
Wow, that is so specific. I love it.
I don't know how that goes.
It is basically exactly as you described. It's like a calm, peaceful, like piano instrumental kind of thing. I think it's vaguely piano. It's like a chiptune thing, but
like ambient kind of ethereal music.
Yeah, I'll send it to you after the show. You'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very much like a calming, soothing screensaver.
Yeah. Well, and that makes me want the horror of jellyfish to be kind of partly this thing that lures you in and lulls you into a calm.
Oh, yeah.
That's which has nothing to do with the question, but I'm world building.
Yeah.
It's vibes. It's vibes. Genres are just vibes now.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they kind of were.
Yeah.
Right.
I have one more shout out, if I may.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is the raccoon, who I love. And if we're thinking of like genres in like literature or movies, like that's a heist movie for sure with the raccoon. But for me, the raccoon has a very like bit crunch music, like a techno to it, where they're like these like feisty little guys, and they have this like upbeat like do like, you know, poppy almost Game Boy like music behind it. They have like an 8-bit board that follows them around.
Yeah. I was thinking about the Venus flytrap, because it said plants or animals. So I think that the Venus flytrap to me represents like hard sci-fi.
Okay.
The Venus flytrap is like engineered to survive its environment. Like it was something that Arthur C. Clarke sat down at his desk and thought about for like 3 weeks before putting pen to paper, because it is so perfect for what it is. And I feel like a lot of carnivorous plants sort of fall under that same category. So yeah, I like went immediately to like hard sci-fi. Like Arthur C. Clarke made the Venus flytrap.
I thought a little bit about, like, the first thing I thought of were flowers. I know this is going to be reductive, but flowers are a romance. So that's just where I started. And then I started thinking, okay, well, there's tons of different kinds of flowers, but there's also tons of different kinds of romance stories, because romance is in pretty much every other genre. A lot of stories have a romantic plot amid whatever genre it is. And so that kind of led me to think, well, there's things like, I don't know, carnations are probably more like a juvenile rom-com. And roses are like a vampire story in my head.
Okay.
Because they have the thorns. And then there is a more like sinister, like have either of you watched You with Ben Badgley?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, but let me look it up real quick.
It's an interesting show that might not be everyone's taste, but it is basically a serial killer thriller, but from the perspective of the main character, who thinks that it is a romantic comedy and he is the protagonist.
Oh, jeez.
And
good.
That's the best way I can kind of describe that. There's like a lot of flowers that are parasitic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that kind of fits in that like weird, like they think that they're, the plants don't think, I'm personifying the plants, but like they think what they're doing is, we're just living, we're living in tandem with these other plants, but the other plants are like being harmed by them.
It's the kudzu. It's literally in the start of the episode.
There we go. It's a circle. We did a circle.
Yeah.
That also made me think of like musical genre for roses specifically, and I don't know why, but I went straight to Pat Benatar. That just feels right to me.
I'm going to drop a link in our chat real quick. I just want you guys to take a quick listen. You don't have to listen to the whole thing, but this is called Plantasia, and it is music for plants, and I love it. It is so cool and chill, and I feel like it is like the original thing that you said, Derek, about the like, the whimsical, like beautiful plant. It is very much that, but it just has like, I don't know. I could listen to this album for a really long time. It's very cool.
It's like harp. It's like harpy.
Yeah.
Harpish, I should say, because harpy means something else.
Of all things, I think this reminds me of The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got that and I didn't get Mario. I haven't played Zelda either.
And Link's Awakening is like a very specific one.
Yeah, no, but I get it. I don't know. I must have heard it before. I get exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's just like chill out music.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for indulging in my favorite animals.
Yeah.
I have more, but like it's silly.
I mean,
What are your favorite animals?
There's too many of them.
I had a hard time picking favorite animals. I actually sat down and I was like, hey, Whitney, what are my favorite animals? And she's the one who pointed out trilobite, and I was like, I can't believe I couldn't have come up to that on my own.
Oh, yeah, I would have thought that.
Yeah, that's like my number one slot. But
well, there is one that I always say, because I like too many animals, and if you were to put a picture of, say, just the first thing that came to my mind right now is a squirrel. So if you were to put a picture of a squirrel in front of me, I'd be like, I love squirrels. And that's true about like anything. If you say, yeah, but what about bears? I do love bears, So I always say an animal that is always a contender for my favorite animal is a rhinoceros beetle.
Yeah.
I think they're really neat, and they'll give you hugs, and they're just wonderful. And there is a song by Tom Waits that is very industrial. And it has the sound of like clanking gears and like steam and stuff.
Ooh.
It's called Underground. I don't know what genre that would be other than industrial, I guess. And for whatever reason, that makes me think of a rhinoceros beetle.
No, that fits in my head as well for the rhinoceros beetle. Very like metallic and like the word you used was perfect, industrial. Like even though these are like little guys, they're little guys out in the world doing their beetle thing, but they have a very industrial feel.
Yeah. I feel like ants would also be in a similar category, although I think,
Mhm.
I don't know why, but for ants, I sort of, do you know how the song Allentown by Billy Joel starts?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I get from ants, where it's like this factory sound, and then there's like a whistle that tells them all to go to work.
Yeah.
That kind of fits with how they live.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hard little workers.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to shout out the Southern Cassowary too, but I feel like it is both inappropriate for me to say that the like typical Australian sounds I associate it with, like the typical Australian instruments are what I hear with that little bird.
Our listeners, where do you draw the line between your cannibalism in various genres?
What genre is your cannibalism?
What genre is your cannibalism?
If you could eat music,
if you
would
could
ya?
eat music, I would devour
if
music.
I could eat music, I think I would go with 1980s Japanese city pop. That would go down so smoothly. That would be like a crisp, like a cucumber martini is what that would go down like.
I want some synthwave to like hype me up in the morning. That's like
Yeah.
caffeine.
I thought that was going to be like cocaine.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, Derek.
Synthwave makes me think of New York in the 80s.
It makes me think of Miami in the 80s, which is also cocaine.
Also, that's fair. It's very cocaine.
Yeah.
She don't lie. It's Eric Clapton reference. So, listeners, if you have any thoughts on any of the things that we talked about, not specifically the most recent stuff, but any of the episode, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com, or you can comment on our blog, or you can like us on Facebook, or you can tweet at vaguelysci. Hey, Jim, where do we get all these wacky questions?
We get them from the audience, you folks who are listening right now with your ear holes. And if you, the person who has the ear holes, has a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. And if you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other cool places that podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
And tell your friends to tell us what their favorite animals are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what they'd taste like or sound like. Both.
Or
Yeah.
movie like.
Yeah.
what they movie like.
Yeah.
What do they movie like?
Yeah.
What do you movie like?
Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli. And don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. If you want to prove to the world that there's ethics, probably, we've got that design.
So thank you to Allie for being our guest this week.
Hey, thank you guys for having me back. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
I'm Allie.
But hey, it's just some science. Some vague science.
Toodaloo, everyone.
Whoa. Bye. We've dunked on Australia before, too.
Yeah.
List the episode.
I mean, we've done it a lot, but it has been a while.
Yeah. I'm bringing some real weird energy tonight. Just back cataloging the
That's okay.
entire time.
Yeah. We never do that. We should do it more often.